I had a unique experience this week to cook on an amazing range. I never even heard of one before, but it's an Aga, A-G-A, and they're a very famous and very expensive range that were very, very popular in the UK for a long period of time. And the company still exists, and they make a very modern version of this range. Anyway, so I'm going to show you some of the features and talk about it a little bit. Okay, so this range still looks very similar, almost identical to what it looked like in 1921 when it was invented. We're in a cottage in Ireland, and it's just a beautiful, the flowers are out. Anyway, it's a lovely like Airbnb cottage. We're just here for a few days with Tammy's siblings. So it's a family gathering. And and I always like to cook when we're on vacation, and so I had to try to figure out how to cook on this thing. But the basic unit that was first invented was this piece to this side. This is a newer addition that was added by the company later. But this would be your original oven. And back in 1921, it was invented by Gustave Dalén. And he was a physicist who had a terrible accident and an explosion, and he was blinded. And so then when he was trying to heal from this terrible accident, he was at home for a long period of time, and working with his wife, he realized that the ranges at the time were not safe, and they weren't easy to use, and they were hard to keep clean. And so even though he was blind, he figured out a better way, a better invention for cooking with it. So he invented this range. Now, it's pretty amazing. Like this particular unit was built in the 1990s. So in a more modern time, and it's electric. But the original, the fire would have all been here in the center. So it would have been for solid fuels, coal and wood. Martha Stewart has a wood burning version, she said in one of her videos, in one of her kitchens. And then she also has another one that I believe is electric or gas. But the design has stayed the same for over 100 years. So 1922 is when he was inventing this range. And so in this half is where right now this is an electric version. So that's the only adjustment on this stove, because there's just one heat source right here, and there's no temperature control at all. It's just one hot area here. Is probably some big electric coil in there. But originally that's where the coal or the wood would have been, and you would have controlled the flame in this area. So this would be your coal, your wood, or your electric, or when they added ones that would burn cooking oil, like later on. So that's where your heat is. Now everything else is just based on how the heat moves from this location. So this unit here is quite hot, and these units, this stove stays on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It never shuts off. We don't even know how to shut it off. It's always on, and that's the way that they were designed to be used, so that you always had, this is kind of what is used to warm this part of the cottage. So it's a heat source, and that's, in the old days when they're keeping the house warm with coal or wood, then you always had your oven or your range was always ready for you. So they called this a hob. This is your boiling hob, and then this is your simmering hob. And it's just because the heat is under this part that this one's hotter and this one's a bit cooler. And then these ovens, this is your your roasting oven, and it's hotter And then you have your baking oven, which is lower. Now they're quite deep, but they're not, very wide. We're used to much bigger ovens. But that's the crazy thing about this range is they never changed the layout of it over the whole 100 years. And so they kept the design the same, even though the technology has changed dramatically, just because of the way that a lot of people like the way that this works. So then when they added this half to the unit, then you have two more ovens, small ovens. This one was called just a warming oven. And then this one was another baking type oven. And so you could actually do an incredibly huge meal on this unit. You could have a turkey in and Martha Stewart did a video where she's got a roast and a turkey and all kinds of different dishes. And they're all coming out of this oven at the same time because there's so many things going on here. So I've cooked on it 3 times. I did crepes first. And I found that this is not hot enough. We just can't seem to get it hot enough to use it for practical cooking. Martha Stewart cooked her pancakes right on this iron here. We've been using pans on it. And on this boiling stove, you put pans on it. And the way they describe it in the videos is if you have it right in the middle, it's the hottest. And then if it gets too hot, then you just slide the pan partway off to control your temperature, because you know when they had coal and wood and stuff, you're not just turning your temperature up and down. So how this oven works and how it still is used today is based on how it was used over 100 years ago. And so I'll just get a pan here. So instead of turning, if you're boiling something and it's starting to boil over, instead of turning it down, you just do this. That's and then you just adjust how much heat you want in your pan based on how far on and off and then if you want to, like simmer it, then you could put it onto this, and it's definitely much cooler. I mean, it's still very hot, obviously, but this one is much hotter. And then you just adjust it by placement. And then you adjust your cooking or your baking and your roasting by which oven you put it in, not by turning it up or down. Now, this one obviously is a more modern one that has electric, and you can turn it anywhere from 1 off to 6. I guess that's the only way I know of turn it. It doesn't actually turn it all the way off. Somehow, even when I looked it up on the internet, this machine is designed to stay on, which is kind of crazy. It's being kind of it's now under pressure because with all of the pressure to not, waste energy, these ovens use a lot of energy because they're always on and just the way they're designed. So the very latest versions, because this brand is still made, I think it's been bought out by other companies, but there's a much more modern version of it that has a complete digital layout here, and I think you can turn everything on and off and all that. But people love this style of oven so much that they're still making it in this style. So pretty amazing. If you want to look it up on the internet, it's a fascinating history. But the cool thing is on this side is now, it used to be, I don't know what all the different versions of what they put on this side because they've been around so long. But now this one is just an electric hot, glass top. And the newest versions of this is induction, which is much better. And so this one would have, say, 1996, I think, is when they started making this electric version of this range. But so this one is somewhere in the late 90s, maybe the early 2000s. But now they have even more fancy modern ones. But they're a beautiful appliance. They have some kind of a cover on them here. I don't know, maybe just to keep it from getting scratched. But they have these beautiful stainless steel tops on them. And but it's really interesting cooking with it you feel like you're trying to cook with an old coal or wood stove. And so when I would make the eggs Benedict, I would put the plates in here to get them warm. And then I put the croissants with the cheese in here to get them, you know, toasted and melted the cheese and everything. And that worked out really, really well. I used this side to, you know, to steam the asparagus and to make, you know, I used a double boiler to make the hollandaise sauce. And anyway, so it's just crazy. You have all these different heat sources and all these different options on where to cook and how to cook things. I think, you know, the people that got used to them and love them really would have a hard time going to something smaller. But for somebody that's used to a big open oven with big cookie trays and big roasting pots, I think they would struggle with these small oven options. But this is anyway, it's a historic piece. And originally they were all just bone color, like a cream color. And then different decades, they started adding different colors. This one's a beautiful blue one. But there are black ones and white ones, and there's lots of different colors. But anyway, it's a very fascinating bit of history, and it was really fun to cook on it for a few days. Tammy just showed up. Whoa.
Irish stew.
Whoa.
Okay, Irish stew is amazing. It's got your carrots and your potatoes and your lamb and everything, but then they scoop 2 scoops of mashed potatoes. So it's like potatoes on potatoes.
And who's that for?
You.
Oh, wow. That's super nice of you. Okay, so we're gonna do a little bit of a test here. It does have a bit of a temperature indicator. That's all it has. There's no numbers on it. People must just be used to how they cook. So I've put a thermometer in this oven, and it's just starting to warm that up. So we'll find out that in a minute. Once we get this thing nice and hot, we're gonna time it on how, this is the boiler plate. So we'll see how long it takes to boil some water there. That's gonna be our little test unit here. So no, will be interesting to see how long this takes. Talk to you in a second. This is Gretchen.
Hi.
My sister-in-law.
Hello.
What are your feelings about this range?
I just think it's beautiful. It's kind of a beast. I've heard they're really heavy.
It looks heavy.
I'm not sure how heavy they are, but I know they're fancy and expensive. I love the blue lacquer on it. I think it's just really attractive. So I suppose if you really worked at it and figured out how to use it,
yeah,
you know, it would really do a great job at baking. But I've only seen them in magazines or at friends' houses.
Yeah, kind of surprised to see a Airbnb with this in it, right?
I've had this water on here for about 4 minutes now, and it's still not boiling. So we'll just wait and see. But this oven did heat up to over 400.
Nice.
And so I think it has a functioning level. But Brett and I could not cook anything on this burner. Like,
are we running out of butter?
We can't be running out of butter.
That's an emergency.
That's all there is left. Yeah. That's all the butter. We do love our Irish butter. And we're down to our last smidgen of Kerrygold.
Much that is.
Yes.
And how many did we start with?
And we have a bread station here with all different kinds of, like the Irish do their brown soda bread, which is very sweet and lovely. And then we have baguettes and a sourdough. I don't know what this big loaf is. Is this a big sourdough loaf? What's that?
Or just a wheat loaf.
Right?
I don't know. Anyway, but it's all lovely. Oh,
it's a carb, you know, thing.
Probably you could dry that off and have our butter dish back.
It's a carb week.
Yes, high carb. Sorry. Okay, so I don't know if it's ever gonna boil water.
Will it boil the water?
No,
Okay.
it will. It's just gonna take a long time.
So
Yep.
favorite thing about coming to Ireland is smelling the peat. It's illegal now to purchase your fingers on the.
No.
It's illegal now to purchase, but farmers get it all the time. So I went and asked the store owner, I said, okay, where can I get some peat? And she looked at me like, are you mad? You just
harvest it.
You just harvest it. It's in piles on the side of the road.
She says, you can just pull by the side of the road like.
And then she goes, just a minute. Let me go to me shed and see if I can find some. So she brought out a stick.
Yeah, she goes, let me go see in the shed.
And she brought you one?
She brought me one.
And so you have it?
Yeah, it's right over
So
here.
we're gonna get to burn one
Piece.
peat log because you know, they cut it out of bogs and it takes a million years to make it, so it's not a renewable resource. So there's a bit of it.
What it is it's turf. It's,
Yeah.
you know, like it's...
Well, it's peat, so like we're used to thinking of it as
So
peat moss.
see all that, the roots and everything?
Yeah, it's just old compressed plant life.
But there is nothing that smells better. You can buy candles in Ireland that have this scent.
No smell. Anyway, it does smell very nice when you burn it. We are getting some bubbles, so it will boil water, but we'll just see if it'll break into a rolling boil here in a little bit. But that's been like 8.5 minutes.
And this is the constant temperature that's happening through this top?
This is the hot one. They call this the boiler hob or the boiler plate, and this is the simmering one. But yeah, it is taking a jolly long time to boil that water. Okay, well, it's been 16 minutes and it still isn't boiling anymore, so that's as hot as it gets. It cannot quite, I mean, it's obviously it's near 100 degrees, but anyway, very interesting, but not as hot as what we're used to nowadays. But even though the oven, yeah, it stayed almost 425. So that's, you know, pretty hot, you know, typical for what we would roast with or bake. Anyway, 425. Yeah, I guess that's what you would roast with. Too hot for regular baking.
$2, Dave.
And that would go down in here for the baking, and that's the roasting oven.